City, but I'm happy to represent rural Missouri right now, and I just kind of look forward to kind of whatever the next step is going to be, and hopefully I can continue to raise minority issues and minority voices and continue to do that work. So with that, I would love to, I think we've got a few minutes if you want to have any questions. I see a question there. She really wants to ask a question. No? All right. Yes?
So you said, one of the biggest things whenever you were younger and you said you didn't want to run, you said, all the money you have to beg for, all these things you have to do, what was, from going, from that side saying, I can't even imagine myself doing that, to doing it, what do you think, was it as horrible as you thought it was going to be, or how did you strive through it if it was?
It was worse. The raising money part was worse than I thought it would be, because the raising money piece was completely different on that level than it was what my dad had to do. My dad running for county prosecutor and county judge, that's just peanuts. My first race was a four-way primary. It was incredibly contested. There was a Republican who was waiting for us on the other side, but that one didn't matter because my district in Kansas City is 72% Democrat. And so it's going to be held by it. And so the whole game is in August. Same as where I grew up. The whole game is in the August Republican primary. And so we had a four-way primary. One of my guys that I ran against was a small businessman who was independently wealthy and had basically a self-funded campaign, and he raised and spent $250,000. One of the guys that I ran against was a lawyer who had just moved to the area, but he'd been in politics for a while. He'd been a state rep in several counties south of Kansas City, and he raised, through his political connections, $250,000. There was a wife of a sitting state rep who was also running for the position, and fortunately her numbers were a lot lower. She was about $50,000, and then I was able to raise and spend in that race $100,000. And so, and that was through, and at the time we had contribution limits, which I firmly believe we need to reinstate. The most money I could get from someone was $650. My average contribution was somewhere around $60. I was getting checks from, former nuns for $15. I was getting checks from, kids who were giving me $10. That was the kind of thing. And so putting together $100,000 was incredibly hard, and I had to spend that entire summer calling everybody I knew, and everybody they knew, and everybody that they knew, and asking for money. And it is easy to call and ask for money when, number one, it's tax deductible. Political contributions are not tax deductible. And number two, when you're doing it for a cause, like I'm doing this for puppies, or I'm doing this for babies, that's easy. When you're calling and saying, I would like you to give me $650 because I want to be a state senator, that's a hard ask, especially when the folks you're calling are being asked for a lot of other things. So it was incredibly difficult, but I was surrounded by an amazing group of people who convinced me that we could do it. We had just come off the issue campaign for the gay marriage amendment, and most of the political structure of the people who fought that fight were still together and on board. And they were the ones who said, you know what, we can do this. We've never had an openly gay state senator. You have your legal connections, your volunteer community connections, your neighborhood connections, all those things that I've been doing. So what I would say to anyone who's interested in politics is that even right now, you need to be building your, it used to be called a Rolodex, I don't even know what it would be called anymore, your contacts in your phone, because all of those people are people you're going to call and ask for money when you run for office. Because what you do is this, you start, and any campaign training will tell you this, you start by calling the people closest to you, and you say, hi mom, hi brother, hi best friend, I'm running for Senate, and I would like you to give me $100 because you love me. And that's the first ask. It's friends and family. And then once you get a little nest egg, you take that out and you start to go to your circle of work friends, or your community of faith, or the groups that you volunteer with, your PTA, whatever it is, that next circle. And then once you start to build that money, you're getting some momentum, you go out to the next circle of people. And the next circle of people are kind of interesting, because once you work all of your own networks, you then move on to the people who want to give you money because they don't like your opponent. And that's a fun place to be, because if you get that far, you've got some momentum. So then you're going out there and you're like, yeah, you don't want this guy. And then they're like, you're right, I don't. And so they start to give him money. And then, when you're going to win, when it's the 11th hour and the last round, the last concentric circle of money starts to roll in, and it's the people who had already given to your opponents, and they're like, oh my gosh, I think I messed up. I think that this Justice kid may have a chance, and I better give her some money too. So it's the people that are hedging their bets. And when that money starts to flow in, you have a pretty good sense that your campaign is going the way that it should be. But that's sort of just the concept of concentric circles. If you, for women who want to run for office, if you are a pro-choice woman, I would highly recommend Emily's List. They have, I think, one of the best trainings out there. It's absolutely the best way to get your training. You can also have your staff train in it, or if you want to go through it as a potential staffer. If you're openly gay, regardless of any of your other issues, if you're openly gay, you can go through a training with the Victory Fund. They're an amazing group that will do the same type of teaching. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation, there are groups out there for you. So like I mentioned Emily's List, that's pro-choice women. Victory Fund, that's LGBT individuals. There's Democratic, there's women, there's Republicans. I mean, every group has a campaign training. You got to go through it. And I'd say go through it early. And if you want to get involved, keep records of every person you meet along the way. 2 years ago, I went to an amazing course out at the Harvard Kennedy School. I got to spend a month. I got to live in the dorm. I got to go back to school. It was unbelievable. One of the guys I was in class with called me yesterday. He's like, I'm pulling the trigger. I'm doing it. I'm running statewide. I need $250. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. Every single person he's ever met, he's calling them and asking for money because he needs $6 million. He's running statewide in Illinois. So these are the sorts of things. Keep your index, your Rolodex, keep it current, keep it up. It is the worst part of running for office. Yeah.
You said it takes $6 million. What about inventory? How much does it cost for like a successful campaign?
I think Senator McCaskill just had a $6 million campaign. That was clearly way bigger than, and Illinois is different because their media market's more expensive and that sort of thing. But if you wanted to run for something like my seat, which is 185,000 people, I'd say we're probably, depending on the media market, $200,000. If you wanted to run for a city council seat in a large metropolitan area, depending on whether you were running in district or at large, you're probably looking anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000. It really kind of depends on what the size of your base is, and what you'll learn when you go through campaign training is you'll learn exactly what your win number is, and I'm firmly convinced that's the reason I won my first race, is because I knew exactly the number of votes that I had to get in order to win. It was a four-way primary. I knew how many people were going to vote based on past elections, and I said I need 1,551 people to win. I think, and I may have forgotten the number now, but I was within 50 votes. We knew exactly how many people we needed to win. We went out and identified a percentage of those people, and then we drug all of their butts to the door on election day. And that's the recipe to winning an election. And it's easier in smaller elections than it is on a statewide basis, but you really have to learn to do that. To just go out there and say, I'm going to buy some TV ads, doesn't work. It just doesn't work. As you know, the closer it gets to either August or November, our TVs are pretty clogged up. Plus, there's a lot of ways now that people get their media outside of television. And so, I don't know about you guys, but I DVR everything now. Actually, I just got rid of it, but before I got rid of it, I DVR'd everything. So I fast forward through all my commercials, except for during election season, which my partner Lucy absolutely adores, because that's the one time a year where I watch every commercial, because I adore political commercials. I think they're amazing, and I love them. But yeah, it can be all over the place. It just depends on what you're running for. And sometimes things get out of hand. It's my understanding there was just $500,000 spent on a fire board race in some suburb in St. Louis County, some little tiny town, because the firefighters union hated one of the people who was running, who won, by the way. That was a fire board race. I mean, I don't even know what a fire board does. But, I mean, that's insane. $500,000. It's unbelievable. And as long as there are no campaign contribution limits, it's just the Wild West here. Any other questions? Yeah. No, it's fine.
So I'm planning on going to graduate school and then getting my PhD after that. But I didn't want to teach, but if I could do like some side work for campaigns and stuff, what jobs would for a campaign like yours, or even throughout an entire state, would they be willing to hire somebody with that high of a degree, and what would they have them do?
Well, it probably depends on how much money you're willing to take. I mean, that's the reality. Last night, I was talking to our Democratic Senate caucus intern. We have an intern from Truman State, and he's down there, and I said, hey, what's your plan after this? He said, I'm going to grad school, something in statistics. He said numbers, and I just kind of glazed over. And I said, well, are you interested in politics? You want to stay in politics? He said, absolutely. And I said, well, where do you want to go to grad school? He said, I don't care. They've got this and that. And you can do a lot of the stuff, you know, distance learning, and or, you know, 2 days a week, drive to Columbia or whatever it is. And he said, but I'd like to stay in politics. And I said, well, you know, what kind of salary are you going to need to get where you need to be? And he said, you know, kind of told me the range and that sort of thing. And I said, well, you know, I'm getting ready to kind of put out an RFP or whatever you call it, you know, call for resumes to try to find some folks who are, you know, college graduates, grad students, law school graduates who decide I don't really want to practice law, to come on as my campaign person for the next race I'm going to run. And I said, I can tell you this, I can guarantee you employment from this date to this date. I said, I'll tell you some things I can't do. I just cannot. I have no ability to provide you with any sort of health insurance. Fortunately, through Obamacare, I can capture this guy till he's 26 because he's on his dad's plan or whatever that is right now, or you know, other candidates as well. You know, but you're going to have to do these following things. And he said he'd be interested in putting in the degree. I wanted to look at it that way, and I would be willing to let him continue to get his education while he's working for me. If it's not him, then somebody else. But I think there are those type of things. We have down in Jefferson City right now a group called Legislative Research, and it's filled with lawyers who work it's in the basement, it's literally in the basement, and they write all our bills for us. We have PhDs in economics who are heading up our budget committee. I mean, those are the sorts of things that they're doing. And so there's lots of stuff out there, especially when you leave Missouri and go to Washington, D.C. The level of staffer that you have, and that a United States Senator has or a United States Congressman has, is unbelievable. I mean, you'll have folks from, you know, all walks of life. And those are definitely, and one of the best ways to get one of these positions is to start out as a volunteer. So, any other questions? Well, it's great to meet all of you. Thank you for this opportunity, and please stay in touch if you ever need any advice or anything. I'm down in Jefferson City for another 2 years, and I'm in Kansas City. You can find me. Pretty easy, JUSTUS. And it was really good getting to know you, and I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you on the campaign trail in the future.